Like and follow if you love horror. It looks like ectoplasm to me, but then again, Agent Coolidge. Miranda's voice had a pissed off quality to it. I don't have the forensic kit. Yes, ma'am. Joe Jack hurried over, irritated. They couldn't all be emotionless like Canthropes who had probably fought in some sort of ancient war or some crap. Just, looking for more. Joe Jack opened his kit and began collecting samples. Now that he knew what he was looking for, he could find the traces of ghostly presence fairly quickly. The kit would keep it from dissipating before they could examine it, but if they had arrived an hour later, they would be faced with the same lack of evidence they had seen at the bank. Collecting spectral residue was a bit of a trick. The very second living tissue was near it, it was like dish detergent on oil. Something drove a hard wedge between the realm of the dead and this one, and Joe Jack didn't want to lose his only evidence. He produced a bone sampler and scraped the residue into a sample tube, readied with stasis magic. Like a moment frozen in time, the substance floated into the middle of the container and froze there. He then scanned it with Inquisitor. It confirmed this was in fact spectral in nature, which wasn't surprising. What was surprising was the energy. Spectral energy was emotionally charged, so much so it manifested chemical reactions similar to what one occurs in the person's body. Miranda surveyed the carnage. Each splintered piece of human furniture and blood splattered told a sliver of a tale about violence that had transpired. The UP had yanked the door open and pulled the first victim through, slamming the door with enough force to sever his arm, cracking the door frame and pulling the hinges free in the process. A few feet away, tossed carelessly, was part of a man's head, but that mystery was solved when she glanced a few feet in the other direction. The UP had passed by and dragged another man over several chairs and tables, knocking things everywhere before reaching his arm through the man's back and pulling out his ribs, flaying the flesh there to the bone. A few feet forward from the faceless body was a metal support pillar with blood, flesh, and hair stuck to it. Below it was another corpse with the head resting in its lap. The final corpse was paid special attention to. It had been dismembered entirely. As gruesome as it was, Miranda guessed that the victim had died of either blood loss or fallen into shock before the Casper reached his torso. Miranda played out the scene in her head as she followed each wound and blow. Every cracked piece of wood or shattered glass thing was another detail in a cinema of violence in her head. Finally, she stood over the final corpse. This one is pissed, Joe Jack whistled. Looks like the auctioneer was the prime target. These other poor saps likely just got in the way. But I gotta tell you, while it's hard to speculate on a lot here, you get the feeling that our unfriendly ghost made them watch. He gestured at the first corpse, one arm missing but the other reaching out like he was begging for help. Then the other one just cowered while he watched his friend get his head squeezed off. Miranda nodded. She again found herself pleasantly surprised by Joe Jack's intuition. Then when this fellow was on his lonesome, knowing what was about to happen, the UP ripped him limb from limb, like pulling the legs off a bug. Joe Jack placed his hands at his side and felt like he wanted to spit, but he knew better to contaminate a crime scene like that. He shook his head. Our motive is mounting up here, Miranda suggested. We know it's a ghost, an apparition. The UP dies. Obviously the estate goes up for auction. The bank manager is unfortunate enough to buy the toy. This toy is a fetish for our UP. The UP kills the bank manager and the auctioneer is punishment. Miranda stooped as close as she could to the limbless corpse without stepping in the blood. We might have lucked out here. Usually ghosts just need to clean up unfinished business. Then they move on. It's got its toy. Killed both of the people they believed wronged it. Maybe that's enough. Unless there's still a score to settle, Joe Jack shrugged. You might want to kill that reprobate judge who declared it absentee. Probably not, Miranda fought the urge to correct Agent Coolidge. She pinched her eyes and shut tight and exhaled deeply. Let the local cops know they can take over from here. We're done. As Miranda and Joe Jack exited the auction house, Ronnie and Diana were pulling into the parking lot. Joe Jack moved to talk to the police who were milling around their cars as Ronnie and Diana approached. What are we looking at? Ronnie asked flatly. We have ourselves one angry Casper. Miranda found herself using Agent Coolidge's lingo and winced. Ronnie caught the wince and chuckled. Casper the unfriendly ghost. Joe Jack beat you to the punchline. Miranda actually appreciated Ronnie's attempt at humor this time and couldn't help but jab back at the comment. We might actually be too late on this one. Most spectral UPs move on after just a couple kills. We'll have to hope this business here isn't finished and headed off at the next target. I'm sorry, Hope? Diana was a little taken aback by Miranda's flippant comment. Yes, murder bad, she rolled her eyes. We're out to capture a damn UP. For all we know, this one isn't done yet, so let's invent a ghost trap and hope we can figure out who its next victim is. This stung Diana's sensibility, but she never knew if she should act on such things. Generally, when a superior officer was being crass, she was expected to ignore it. This was a habit instilled into her long before the UPD. She observed many jingoist behaviors from the higher-ups. Perhaps it helped them blow off steam. Perhaps they were all just jaded from years on the job. Whatever the reason, callous comments were the norm, and while she couldn't understand it, she accepted it. At least she didn't have to worry about locker room banter from Miranda or the other men in her department. But if it's moved on, then we don't have to worry about that, Diana finally said. And we can't capture it, Miranda shot back. All right, I'll ask the obvious. Ronnie threw his hands out to the side. How? How the hell do we capture a ghost? Hell, why do we want to? I'm not saying it's impossible, but spirits deserve to be moved on, not nailed down. The crux of the issue here is that they're stuck here to begin with. We stick them here permanently, and I can't even speculate on the problems that will cause. Ronnie's got a solid point, Joe Jack said as he slunk back into the group. He looked agitated. Spirits tend to draw power over time, get stronger. Sometimes good, usually bad. We move them on for a reason, a dang good one too, and for everyone involved. Listen, this isn't just some selfish desire to impress the brass, Miranda snarled a little as she spoke. The capture of a UP means the study of that UP. We could understand why ghosts stay behind, what their connection is to their fetish, and how to sever that connection. Well, shoot, we already know how to do that. Joe Jack felt the conversation was a little silly. A simple blessing or destroy the fetish. Not just this one, Agent Coolidge, she sighed. All ghosts, all wraiths, all spirits. If we can understand the connection, we don't need to lean on old, long-winded rituals. And not every fetish can be destroyed. You seem to forget some fetishes are people and some are places. She found her temper building as she explained herself and raised her tone. And it's bigger than that. We're talking about the future where we can just hit a button on Inquisitor and sever the connection between the spirit and its fetish. The UPD is stagnating. We're not moving forward. We're dwelling on the past. We can do our job unless we grow. And part of that is through developing new techniques. The UPs are changing and we are not. I will not become obsolete. It didn't seem as though a single agent was on her side. Diana already very much objected to the UPD's heavy-handed practices. Ronnie and Joe Jack both seemed morally opposed to the whole idea. She understood at least a bit where Ronnie was coming from, but Joe Jack, why did he care? Surprisingly, Diana was the first to relent. You're right. The criminal might already be dead, but it's still a criminal. We can't just allow it to continue its rampage. And if capture is possible, understanding it could prevent more like it from the future. It could save lives. Ronnie and